All right, so we're gonna use those ideas, the fact that multiplying and dividing rational numbers, same rules as integers. Same signs, positive, opposite signs, negative. So look here, it says use this fundraising chart to help answer the questions that follow, okay? And it says Jeremy is selling plants for the school's fundraiser and is listed above in the chart from his fundraiser is a chart from his fundraiser order form. So Tamara Jones was a customer. She bought tulips, two of them, two plants. It's $4.25 per plant and hasn't paid yet. Mrs. Wolf bought a daisy, just one of them. It's $3.75. She paid her $3.75. Okay? It says use the information chart to answer the following questions, show your work, and represent the answer as a rational number. Then explain your answer in context of the situation. It's great that we can get an answer, but what does it mean? All right, so we'll come back here. If Tamara Jones writes a check to pay for the plants, what is the resulting change in her checking account? So what is the change in her checking account balance? What's happening to her account? So Tamara Jones bought two tulips and it's $4.25 a plant. So that's two plants, $4.25 each. All right, so if I wanted to write an expression or an equation for this, I'm just gonna, if there's two plants and they cost $4.25 each, that's like a negative, right? It's not like a negative, it is. I'm going to times a negative $4.25. Okay, because we're talking about what's happening to her account. Money's coming out of her account. So remember our rules. Multiply the absolute values. 8.5. Opposite signs, one's positive, one's negative. That means it's negative. So what's our answer? Don't tell me that it's a negative 8.5. Tell me that it's a negative $8.50. But what does it mean that it's a negative $8.50? It means, talking about Tamara's checking account, that Tamara's account goes up or goes down? Goes down, right? Decreases. $8.50. I don't know why with a 5 there. Okay, so our account is decreasing $8.50. That's what, when we multiply this, that's great. We get negative 8.5, but make sure we understand what that means. That's all we're doing right now. Let's try a couple more. Mr. Clark wants to pay for his order with a $20 bill. Jeremy doesn't have change. Jeremy tells Mr. Clark he will give him change later. How will this affect the total amount of money Jeremy collects? And explain. What rational number represents the change that must be made to the money Jeremy collects? Okay, so that seems really confusing, but let's just figure out one step at a time. What is Mr. Clark buying? Well, he's buying a geranium. He's buying 5 of them, and they're $2.25 each. So we're talking 5 plants, $2.25 each. Okay? So if we want to figure out his price, I'm just going to go 5 times $2.25. $11.25. But he pays, so that's how much he owes, but he's paying with the 20. Well, if he owes $11.25, but he pays with a 20, how much change does Jeremy need to give him? Well, we can figure that out by subtracting. Okay? And I will tell you that if we subtract those two things, we get $8.75. So our answer, when it says, how will this affect the total amount of money he collects? What rational number represents the change? Well, what rational number represents the change is $8.75. But what does that mean? Well, how does this affect the total amount of money? Think about, what does he have for total amount of money? Does he have too much or too little? Well, he has too much. Jeremy has $8.75 too much. But if you think about it in terms, so that would be a positive $8.75. What if you thought of it though from Mr. Clark aspect, right? How much was Mr. Clark shorted? So I would buy that you could think of this as a negative $8.75. Okay? So if you thought of it that way in terms of Mr. Clark, you could say that Jeremy, he owes Mr. Clark $8.75. So just so you know, there's different ways we can kind of think about this, depending on maybe whose perspective you're on. Okay, just one more. Jeremy's sister Susie borrowed the money from their mom to pay for her order. Their mom has agreed to deduct an equal amount from Susie's allowance each week for the next 5 weeks. What is the weekly change in Susie's allowance? Well, what did Susie buy? She bought one violet for $2.50. So one plant for $2.50. Okay. So she owes her mom $2.50, right? She owes her mom. So that's going to be negative $2.50. And she's going to deduct it from each of the next 5 weeks. Okay. So she's going to take a little bit out every week for 5 weeks. So we're breaking this up. We want to see how much is she taking out per 1 week. So that's dividing. Okay. So you can write it like this, or you could think of it as a negative $2.50 divided by 5. They mean the same thing. Now remember, our rules for dividing. They're the same. Divide the absolute values. And that's 0.5. But we're talking about money, so we know that's going to be 50 cents, right? And then look at their signs. They're opposite signs. Opposite signs is negative. Okay, so our numerical answer is a negative 50 cents each week. What does that mean? Susie's allowance decreases, or something like that, by 50 cents each week. Or you could say it's 50 cents less each week. Something like that. Okay. Okay, so we kind of look at some relationship here between word problems and doing the actual numerical work, and how we can use multiplying and dividing rational numbers to help us figure out if you owe people money or maybe they owe you money. And there's lots of other situations for that as well. So just be very careful you understand what your solutions mean.